Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, another copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here, and this is a missing persons case, guaranteed to be one of the strangest cases you've ever heard about. It's a double disappearance, represents less than 1% of the total cases we investigate. And this one is super bizarre. Now, if you've been following me for the last week, I've talked to you about some UFO-related disappearances. And it's hard to understand those because people never are going to see a UFO actually abduct somebody. And it probably has something to do with some type of radar control they have on their ship that's much more advanced than any radar we have. But they can tell what's in the area. They know that they can probably make those areas stealthy and no one would ever see anything. But a person sent me a letter, and I said I wouldn't mix letters with cases, but because so many of the cases in the last week and a half have been regarding UFOs, I'm going to read this letter. Be patient. Hey Dave, first I want to thank you for your former police work and now your similar dedication to helping families of missing people and sharing the concerns and mystery with all of us. This is my husband's orb experience. Because he has a long held a position of responsibility in a large corporation, he is concerned how the CEO might view him if he shares it publicly, which I understand. To both respect his privacy and also honor what you were trying to uncover, I ask for anonymity as I share his experience. For some background info, we live 10 miles from Lake Michigan in a somewhat rural area, about 20 mostly filled acres with a large pond. On his time off, my husband is a skilled craftsman with a workshop on the property. Around dusk, approximately 5 years ago, he locked up his shop to head in for dinner. On the way, he came alongside our storage shed looking down, watching its footing during a darkening sky. Just then he noticed the ground all around him was brightly lit. And momentarily puzzled, he recalled we have no light fixture there. As he took another step passing the corner of the small building, he looked up to see what was illuminating his path above. It was a large orb, bright white light, hovering just as the peak of the roof, on the shed and on the edge closest to him. He got an intense look at it for several hard staring seconds, for which he heard in his mind the exclamation, "He sees us." The orb jerked up 8 to 10 feet and then shot up and away in an approximate 10:30, 11 o'clock position, slightly southern angle with astonishing speed. He stared the second or two it took to race out of sight. The whole thing takes longer to describe than the minute or not much more than he experienced. In recounting the story to me, the orb's behavior reminded me of how we humans, when lost in thought, get startled and then jerked to attention. Yeah, I buy that. I asked if he could see any form of material, and he said it was a round-sized beach ball. Silver, it appeared metallic, but the white, brilliant yet soft glowing light emanating from it was the overwhelming feature, slightly obscuring the details. I asked if he felt afraid or threatened. He didn't. I asked if he felt if it was there for him specifically, or if he thought it was a chance encounter. He didn't know. The unspoken words he heard in his mind implying to me that they had observed either him or other people before and been unseen up to then. Leaving abruptly infers they didn't expect or didn't want to be seen. As if an orb hovering above our shed is not unusual enough, hearing "he sees us" implies not only occupation but more than one occupant from the beach ball-sized orb. If not that, then remote control of the orb, which would mean some kind of long-range unintended psychic communication. It's possible that a surprise encounter like this could cause an audible hallucination, but they were words my husband would never expect from that size UAP, which in hindsight fit the scenario. He's an intelligent, logical, stable person, problem solver, type in an employment position of respect, not prone to veer off on mental recourse. I believe he saw what he saw and heard what he heard. However unconventional that experience was, and implausible the word seen, there was no time in such a brief encounter to think of his phone camera for proof as he stared. I should mention that he is a man who has great faith in God and reads the Bible daily. He believed God is not limited to life as we think we know it, with just our five senses. He has always believed life on the planet or in other dimensions is possible. He was surprised by the orb's presence, but is not surprised to now have proof, personal proof, the orbs exist. I bought my husband a fairly high-quality drone several years ago, and he's familiar with them. His line of work is highly observational and detail-oriented. This could not be mistaken for a man-made drone. Though he is sure about what he saw, we reenacted the brief encounter several times just to be objective. We assured that there was no possible light source creating a mirage or reflecting anywhere that could be causing this. We had no outdoor lights at that time, though we added several after. I've written this encounter here as I remember my husband telling me when he saw it. When we revisited it years later, one small detail differed, and he has stayed that way. So for truth and reporting, I'll clarify. Once the orb was seen by him, I thought at the time he'd said that it jerked up 8 to 10 feet and zipped off. As I have asked him several times over the years to repeat the story, it is always the same word for word, except he says, when discovered, the orb jerked straight away, zipping off, no 8 to 10 feet, before leaving. I don't think the story changed. I think that's the way he told it the first time, and we were both pretty surprised because my picture in my mind of a detail did not mean to be portrayed. Okay, one thing I have here that I disagree with. These things are way, way smarter than us. Mind speak. Putting a thought in your mind, saying something into your mind to be defensive. Oh, he sees us. Implying that they didn't want you to see it. But what if they wanted you to see that? What if they wanted you to see the orb, but they didn't want you to think they did? What if they were studying you, hovering over you? Maybe the closer they got, the more clear the scan of your body may be. I have no idea. I'm just speaking out loud. But I believe orbs are way more controlled and analytical than we think. When we see them, they want us to see them. That's my belief. The most astounding thing about this brief encounter to me was the proximity. I realized this year that we had not measured the exact distance. I took the height of the building, the distance he was in the front wall, is over 6 feet in height, eye placement at about 4 inches less into consideration, used a thick measuring tape to grade the angle of the orb. I'm no math whiz, but this wasn't rocket science. His viewpoint looking up was about 11 feet from the thing. At times, I wonder if the orb comes back and views my husband or myself or our family unseen. Probably does. What could it be they possibly have gotten secretly watching him in his workshop? Could they send some kind of good or bad vibe? Thoughts? Well, they put some kind of mind speak into his head. What if they could subliminally put thoughts into your head to control your behavior into the future? What if they could? We don't know if they can't. Final thought. I'm grateful for the good you ask of the village. I hope people take it to heart. There's nothing better for the soul and to lift one's spirit than to do something good for another. I was thinking if your letter submitters each mentioned some kind of good they did, might be helpful to inspire others to do good works. I come from a family of volunteers who have spent years helping. The Red Cross transferring blood, hospital to hospital, driving patients for appointments, etc., working in the church. My husband and I are middle class and don't spend all our money on ourselves, so we can pay for dinner anonymously when we see police, fire, and military personnel. But if you have no spare cash, there's so much free one can do. Recycle, pick up trash, teach your kids not to litter, plant pollinators for bees, mow your elderly lawns, shovel in your driveway, etc. Thanks for the letter. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. Now this may take me just a second to pick up here. Okay, got it. When we talk about volunteering and doing good, it's one of my favorite pictures. One of my favorite pictures. Ben had come back from school. We were in Denver. And Angie and I had gone to something in downtown Denver, and we went by the rescue mission downtown. And it said volunteers needed. Ben was coming back, and we had a couple days, and I thought, we're going to do this one day. Me, Ben, and Angie are going to go down the rescue mission and volunteer all of our time. So we went in, volunteered, set up an appointment, chopped vegetables, prepared meal for the first part of the day, set up the buffet, and then served the buffet to individuals. It was a sobering experience for even me. And I think it sort of stunned Ben. It's a photo that one of the people at the rescue mission took. We talked about it when we got home. Ben was sad that so many people are downtrodden. I wanted Ben to have the look and see what the other side of life was like. He was on a break from Miami University in Ohio. Very, very upper middle class school. Many privileged people went there. I hope it helped his soul understand how diverse our world is. The homeless problem has gotten so much worse since that. When we took that picture, it's probably 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. Angie and I did that a couple more times, just ourselves. And we moved. I think it's good to give kids a view like that. I think it's good for all of us to go do that. Yeah. It may hurt a few, but you know what? That's the way life is. Uh-oh, I hear Huck out there. Hold on 1 second. Hey, Huckles. What are you doing? Huh? Okay? Okay. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. Okay, back again. Yeah, Huck is a good mental balance for me. Sometimes cheers me up. If you ever get mentally depressed, go down and volunteer your time at an animal adoption center. It'd be good for you. Yeah, the story today, it's one of a kind. I've never written about it. I've never heard of it until we found it about 3 weeks ago. It involves two small boys. Roger, 6 years old, and Russell Dubois, 3 years old. They went missing May 16th, 1970 in Orange, Vermont. They were the sons of Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Dubois, and the family had 8 kids, 7 boys and 1 girl. and they lived in a place called Williamstown, Vermont. Now, on May 16th, the entire family went to the grandparents' 175-acre farm in Orange to go out into the woods and tag firewood. And their uncle, Lewis, went with them. Here's a map for you. This is Burlington, Vermont. This is the Canadian border. This is Knox Mountain and Orange. This is Newberry. This is Barre, Montpellier, Hanover, Lebanon. So you kind of have the layout of it. So, how many times, if you're a good follower of mine, have I talked to you about a dad going into the woods and the boys follow him into the woods and something happens? At least 5, 6 times. At least. That's what happened this time. Arthur, the dad, is with the family at the cars with his uncle, Lewis. And they go, hey, we're going to go out and tag some firewood on my grandparents' property. You guys just all hang here. And they're about 50 feet from the car, and they turn around, and there's Roger and Russell following them. So both men stop and say, hey, no, you guys got to go back to the family, to mom, and hang out there. We won't be that long. And they watch the boys say, okay. They both turn around and walk in the direction 50 feet away of the car. Same thing's replicated itself many times before. This is what's weird. So, about 10 minutes later, Arthur's tagging some lumber and he hears a noise and he turns and looks and he sees a big female black bear with 2 cubs staring at him. Well, he turns, goes back to the car to ensure his boys made it back safely. He gets to the car and Mrs. Dubois says, no, the boys never came back. So Arthur calls for his uncle and the entire family, and they start searching. And then they get the grandparents and they start searching. And they search the area around that car for an hour, calling out their names. Now remember, they're only 10 minutes behind the boys. That's all that's transpired. At about 1:30, Arthur gets nervous and he calls his brother-in-law. He goes, hey, can you come out and help us? And he goes, yeah, I will, but let's also call the state police. Let's get them going. So at 2:30, the state police and Vermont state game wardens arrive on the property. And they arrive and they immediately call for bloodhounds, which was a brilliant move. And then the word goes out through the community because there's a major gas station right near the road where this happened. Well, at 4:30, the bloodhounds start arriving and they start searching, and the searching goes into the night. And that first night, they had 100 searchers on the scene, yelling the boys' names, walking through the woods, canines not picking up a scent, etc. State police had already called for more reinforcements for the following day. They made a call to the National Guard. They made a call to the governor's office. They did a good job on the initial troopers that got there. They did exactly the right thing. May 17th, the morning starts off with a torrential downpour on the search area. It envelops the area, and all the articles in all the papers said it hindered the search. There were already National Guard helicopters, 2 of them, that had been requested that were arriving just on the periphery. And a New York State Police helicopter had flown across state lines to help on mutual aid. They also had jeeps, half-tracks, mountain rescue teams, game wardens, state police, Radio stations had called for more searchers and assistance. By the middle of the day, they had 500 people on the property looking. Amazing. Now here's a closer up view of the area that they're searching. They're searching an area called Knox, K-N-O-X Mountain, just outside of Orange, Vermont. Now this is the New Hampshire-Vermont border right here. Canadian border's up here, but this is a close-up view. Get a little more close-up for you. Okay. Description of the area that we're in for this: remote and heavily wooded. It was that way in 1970, and it's still that way today. Mostly farm and hunting camps with lots of bear and deer. Multiple articles stated this specifically. If you're a follower of 411, you know this is going to knock you in the side of the head. Swamp located less than a half mile from the point the boys were last seen. And it specifically said this: a steep boulder field is strewn across the mountain as it rises 100 yards from the place where the boys were last seen. Huh? What? I couldn't believe it when I read that. The American Red Cross and the Salvation Army had already started to set up food and coffee trucks. The jurisdiction was set up for the Vermont State Police and the Orange County Sheriff and the Barre Highway Patrol. And they were getting at about 500 people per day in there, plus all these resources. Late in the day on May 17th, a psychic contacts the family. And Mrs. Dubois talks to the psychic with the police there. Psychic says that the kids walked down a very well-worn road. Psychic said that they'll be found under a tree that has heavy branches, and that searchers may have already passed this tree. Psychic said that they'll be found before the day ends. Searchers heard this and they were stoked. Problem was, May 17th ended and the boys weren't found. The next morning, the psychic stated that she now feared that the boys encountered water, implying that they drowned. So they put scuba divers and skin divers into that local swamp, found nothing. Hundreds of ground pounders and helicopters flew around this area May 19th and 20th. There was some of the most extensive helicopter time in the northeastern part of the United States ever recorded. On May 21st, Governor Dean Davis of Vermont ordered 150 National Guardsmen into the area to search. The reason being is that the first searchers got in there on the 17th, and for 4 days straight they were ground pounding the area. And many of the searchers were just exhausted and had to return to work. And they'd had 300 to 500 searchers daily. And now they also had 100 state troopers and 60 fish and game wardens in the area searching. The SAR Search and Rescue centered on Knox Mountain area, just off and away from Orange, Vermont. May 22nd to May 24th, just a massive search that continued. Helicopters continued flying. People were continuing to search on the ground. It was an enormous search. I can't tell you, when I read about this, how many people they got there to search for such a rural area of the United States. The Vermont people really responded. But the really surprising thing, they had 3 helicopters scouring that area from the sky. For 2 boys, understandable. Now, Mr. Dubois had given various interviews to the paper, and he stated that he thought that the boys would always stay together. The reason being is that Roger was very, very protective of little Russell. He said he never thought that they'd separate. They'd be together. Boys are boys. They defecate. They pee. They should be finding this stuff. With as many searchers as they had, they should be finding torn clothing, etc. They're not finding anything. Well, May 25th, psychic Jean Dixon, super famous psychic, said that she could supply the exact location of the boys. And she would by the end of the day. One of her handlers called back at the end of the night and stated that there was an electrical storm in her area, and she'd call back with the location the next morning. And something I've never heard, she never called back. Hard to believe. Jean Dixon is and was considered a very competent psychic in police circles. She'd found a lot of people. For her not to call back is very odd. Really odd. May 26th, search and rescue starts to gear down. Arthur Dubois knew that the search was going to slow. So he drives to meet with the governor of Vermont, and he pleads to have the searchers stay on site, the military stay on site. The coroner at about this time stated that it's an outside possibility that the boys could still be alive. My question is, if the boys were alive, how does thousands of searchers over multiple days miss them? But still, that was viable in the mind of the governor, and he orders the National Guard to stay on site 2 more days. So May 28th, 150 National Guardsmen, 300 state workers from Vermont, 50 state police, 60 game wardens, and about 300 more private citizens are back on the mountain again. And on May 29th, they're still on the mountain. Mountain, around the mountain, etc. Now keep this in mind. A child 1 to 3 years old, according to search and rescue standards, would be found 95% of the time in 2.8 miles or less from the point last seen. A child 4 to 6 years old will be found 4.1 miles from the point last seen. Keep those thoughts in your mind. They're important. May 30th, they had 800 people searching, and the searches had gone on for 12 days. One article said that in 12 days they thought 10,000 people had searched. One article said that. A phenomenal number. I don't recall ever hearing about numbers this large. Or I don't remember a time when there were 3 helicopters on a scene, ever. June 1st, search was ordered terminated by the Vermont State Police. The Major Davis stated that they would return if new evidence was uncovered. But he stated that they had contributed massive helicopter time. They had no reason to believe there was foul play involved. And they found it unusual that they didn't find any clothing, no shoes, no torn clothing, no waste from the boys. Part-time searchers went on for weeks. And there was a lot of people who believed that that September to November time frame in 1970, with hunting season, would come, the remains would be found by hunters. Didn't happen. Remember what we have always talked about regarding hunters. They go off trail. They go into areas that most of us don't. And I think it would have been a good bet to say that they'd probably find the boys. I see this picture and it chokes me up, honestly. These are the boys. Look at those two kids. Great looking boys. Roger and Russell. Well, let's fast forward 17 months. October 13th, 1971. A man named Louis Albeiser, he's a hunter, and he was bear hunting with his 4 dogs, who he had worked with for years. And they were on the west side of Knox Mountain. Louis knew about the Dubois boys, and he had spent hundreds of hours in this area of Vermont, checking the area for hunting opportunity before even the hunting season happens. And that's what hunters, good hunters, do, is they'll scout an area before the hunting season. And Louis had done this, and he knew that the boys were disappeared there. And in the back of his mind, he always thought, there's a chance I may run into them. Well, he's with his dogs, and he comes up on an open meadow on the west side of the mountain, with a very small gully in the middle of the steep meadow on the steep part of the mountain. He comes across a small boot that has like a red fringe around the top and a small skull on the ground. He looked at it, and he later told searchers he knew what he found. The boys. He was a long ways from his car. It was about a 4-hour hike. And weirdly, at about the time he found the boys' remains, his 4 dogs disappeared. It had never happened before. But he marked a trail back to his car, and then he contacted state police, game wardens. It was late in the day on October 13th, so the next morning a small army of state police were escorted to the site by Albeiser. The detectives stated that they felt that the boys were huddled together 6 walking miles from the point last seen. State police stated that Albeiser didn't touch the site, and they appreciated that. The remains were recovered, obviously just bones at this point. And on October 16th, Dr. Lawrence Haydes, the coroner, made a statement that there was no foul play and that the boys probably died from exposure. Just so you know, there's no way to tell what you die from when there's just bones, unless there's a bullet hole in your skull or something like this, or you broke your leg. But the state police stated that this area had been covered many, many times by search and rescue and helicopters. And the helicopters had been specifically scouring open meadows looking for the boys. So how did they miss them? How did they miss them? The canines that they brought never picked up a scent trail. Number 1. Rain hindered the search. Number 2. They disappeared a half-mile from a swamp and water. 3. Articles specifically talked about a boulder field right next to where they disappeared. Number 4. The coroner said that they died from exposure. Number 5. The area was previously searched many, many, many times. 6. And Mr. Albeiser lost his dogs. So you have canines that can't pick up a scent, and then dogs who disappear when they're out with the hunter. Albeiser specifically asked the state police when they were out recovering the body to let him know if they came across the dogs. He was really nervous. And then let's go back in time to May 16th, when Roger and Russell disappeared from their dad. Between the 50 feet from where they were last seen by the uncle and the dad to the car. 50 feet. And take 50 feet in 10 minutes. Well, they had to be on the inside of that 50 feet because the mom never saw him. If they were right next to the car, the mom would have saw him or the other kids would have seen him. But they didn't. 10 minutes. And everybody's yelling their name. Everybody's calling out for where they are. And yet they're not found. And they don't respond. It rained super hard the second day. Well, the first day after they disappeared. How did the helicopters not see them? So many times this, one little body, maybe. Two boys, come on. The more I do this, and the more I understand the intimate details behind what happened. Number one, a boy 1 to 3 years old is found 95% of the time 2.8 miles or less from the point last seen. They're 6 miles away. 6 miles. They're in an open field. No trees. Come on. Search and rescue people said it had been searched dozens of times. Come on. I get a little frustrated because it's pretty obvious to me what's going on. And I don't like it. Roger and Russell didn't deserve that. Super cute kids. God rest their soul. Please do me a favor. Share this story on your social media. Pass it around. And understand you're appreciated. Do something nice for someone in the community near you. It costs nothing but a little bit of your time to do something that is truly appreciated. It doesn't cost money. Just spend a weekend day, go do something like this. At a no-kill shelter for dogs or at a rescue mission. I guarantee you'll feel better about yourself after you do it. When you get out in the community today, smile, be friendly, and do something comforting for someone out there in the world. I greatly appreciate you. Paulides out.